What's happening, guys? Happy Wednesday, and welcome to the Dynasty WarZone, the People's Dynasty podcast. On today's show, we're going to wrap up the 2022 regular season, and we're going to get ready for rookie season. We're going to go over my season-ending Dynasty checklist, or just some things that I do to make my Dynasty teams better, as we are now officially in the off-season. Kinda. No Jerry this week. I was stuck on vacation last week and I had a little flood in my basement. If you're watching live on YouTube, you can kind of see the makeshift studio that I'm operating with as I'm sitting here on a tabletop and my camera and laptop. But the show, as always, does go on. So I've got some good stuff for you today. I'm going to dive right into that here on the show. And let's get right into this. So, first thing I want to do is make sure to tell you to follow us everywhere on social media. You can follow the show at Dynasty WarZone on Instagram, Twitter, but becoming more important will be TikTok and YouTube. I'm going to be launching a new shorts series called the Dynasty Diet. It'll be 1 minute, short videos like you see on TikTok and YouTube now. YouTube actually calls them shorts, and you'll be able to see this starting Sunday. My goal is to drop up to 3 a week, and just another way to drive people to the YouTube channel in order to get more content from the show, and a way to drive up our subscribers and membership base over there. But if all of that is unappealing to you, you're a bit old-fashioned, you don't like social media and all the things that come with it, cool. You can always reach me or anyone at the show. Just send us an email. The email address is dynastywarzone@gmail.com. So there you go. Please, pretty please with sugar on top, subscribe everywhere. If you're on socials, maybe you're not, maybe you can use a significant other, family member, a friend, subscribe to the Dynasty Warzone. Don't be afraid to leave us a rating or review here on the podcast. But we are going to jump right into everyone's favorite segment. We are going to jump into good people, bad tweets. And this one, I'm not even sure this guy qualifies as good people, but it's Skip Bayless. This tweet happened during the tragedy that happened on the Monday Night Football game. And Mr. Bayless tweeted, "No doubt the NFL is considering postponing the rest of the game. But how? This is late in the season. A game of this magnitude is crucial to the regular season outcomes, which suddenly seems so irrelevant," is what Skip wrote. And it's like, me personally, I didn't think that on Monday night during the Monday Night Football game that Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, I didn't think anybody really needed my 2 cents as to what was going on. Much like all of you, I was sitting around watching the TV, listening to Booger and Adam Schefter and Susie Colbert, and just trying to figure out what was going on. The word that I kept hearing that really resonated with me personally was unprecedented. And if you don't know what unprecedented means, it means to have never happened before. And I know the NFL caught a lot of shit about, they were going to give the teams 5 minutes to warm up and get ready to resume play until head coaches Zach Taylor and, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank on Buffalo's head coach. I can see his bald head right now, Sean McDermott. And I could see those guys, meet at halftime, and they ultimately decided they needed a little bit more time. But in fairness, it was unprecedented. Historically, in the NFL, when a player is carted off, because we see this a handful of times a year, right? We see a player carted off, and another handful of times a year, you see the tragedy that is a player leaving the field via ambulance. This is not a first. And historically, when there's precedent, teams would resume play. I don't think at the time the officials on the field or in Cincinnati were prepared for what happened. So they went to what they've done historically, which is they they give the teams a little bit of time to warm up and they resume play. But due to the magnitude of the tragedy that happened to Darman Hamler, that they decided they were going to continue to postpone it. And ultimately, after about an hour, the NFL decided to suspend the game. I'm going to jump into that from what we do here in a second. But this is what makes Skip so stupid. Well, not just this, but but largely what makes Skip so stupid is that he thinks everything needs his immediate reaction in this moment. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I handle every social media thing that I do correctly. I make mistakes just like everybody else, but sometimes the best comment is no comment. I think so often we want to rush to Twitter and social media and just be right and get our thoughts out there. And sometimes I won't name any names, but a lot of people use it as like a sounding board, and they're just frustrated in using that to vent their frustration. But to make statements like this about the NFL doesn't care about the player, or how can we postpone the game, and everything in between, sometimes the best reaction is no reaction. Just let the situation sort itself out. It was unprecedented. Remember that word. An unprecedented event happened last night, and the officials on the field done what they would have done had he broken a leg to the point it would have required an ambulance. Was that the right decision in the moment? No, but it was what their training at that time had allowed them to do. So it was unprecedented. And ultimately, it wasn't about being right. Ultimately, they got it right. I know that ruffled some feathers, and maybe it'll ruffle yours, but that's how I saw it. And it was unprecedented. But Skip, and Skip's famous, right? Got 3.5 million Twitter followers. Some of us have 3,000, 5,000, whatever that 10,000, whatever that number is. But sometimes just read the room and don't rush to your social media to get a comment out there. That's what made this take from Skip so horrible. So that is Good People with Bad Tweets, and that is brought to you by our patron, patreon.com/Dynasty WarZone. We are navigating through 15 Patreon Dynasty leagues right now. How are we handling this situation? I'm going to jump into that here in a second. But if you're looking for a great group chat, we're going to be doing some startups. We'll have a few orphans. More on that to come. But definitely, got a little extra cash in your pocket coming out of the Christmas and holiday season. And, you want to jump into the Dynasty WarZone Patreon, looking to get into a Patreon league, now is the time. A great opportunity to join up with a good group of people. And one of them is in the YouTube comments right now, Mike, and he said, Skip, bad people, bad tweets. That's exactly right, Mike. Bad people, bad tweets. Skip's not a good dude, but you're a good dude because you're a patron and you help support this show. So head on over there, man. Check out patreon.com/Dynasty WarZone. Meet up with some of the ladies and gents and come do Dynasty with us. A lot of good stuff coming for the patrons. So going to jump into the show. And the first thing I wanted to cover tonight before I get into some of my year-end checklist stuff is I want to thank all the fantasy and dynasty commissioners out there, especially our admin, Neil, who helps me tremendously run all 15 of those Dynasty WarZone Patreon leagues. Without guys like Neil, Dynasty Outhouse, his real name is Russ, JD from the GOAT District, Nate Pilmer, Tyler Gunther, so many of the great commissioners that I play Dynasty fantasy football with. Without ladies and gentlemen like you, this game is not possible. You do the dirty work, and you often do not get the thank you that you deserve as commissioners. So first of all, tip of the cap, wearing my red Mustangs cap tonight. Tip of the cap to all those that run leagues and have to ultimately make these tough decisions. But if you're not a commissioner, if you're just a dynasty GM, a fantasy GM, this is a great opportunity to extend grace to those ladies and gentlemen who run your leagues. They're doing the best they can. And I mentioned the word earlier when I was talking about Skip, unprecedented. This is unprecedented for fantasy and dynasty commissioners. Nothing to take away from the tragedy that happened on the field. We want nothing but for that young man to get healthy and resume his life and hopefully resume his career as an NFL football player, but just be kind, not only to people on social media, but to your commissioners. They have the weight of 11, maybe 12, 16 other people on their shoulders right now, and it's a lot. So I've seen a lot of cool stuff. I've seen people split pots. I've seen people say, forget the money. I won't name their names as to out them publicly, but two of our wonderful patrons that were super close, they're going to take the would-be money that they won in the first and second place in their particular league. They're going to use that money to pay their league dues for 2023 and then donate the rest of the money to the GoFundMe set up for the charity for Darman Hamler. So that's pretty rad. I think his charity went from like 300 grand or 150 grand to like over 4 million bucks. It just shows the passion and the compassion that we can have as dynasty and fantasy gamers. So pretty cool. And I'm really excited to see what happens. But I'll just say what I'm doing personally along with Neil. And that's right now is I'm doing nothing. I addressed the situation earlier this morning with our patrons in our group chat, and I'm going to pull it up if I have it on my phone real quick. What I posted to our group chat, and you know what? I have the second tweet, and basically I said right now I'm just gonna lay out, but we're not going to do anything. So here was the second tweet, our message that I posted in our Dynasty group chat. And here's what I said. It says, it appears as if the NFL is going to play this week's games and then wait and see if it's still necessary to play the Buffalo-Cincinnati game. It seems as it would take a perfect trifecta of the following set of events. Cincinnati to win on Sunday, beating Baltimore and winning the AFC North. The Bills winning against the Patriots, and the Kansas City Chiefs losing on Saturday. If that happens, I could see the NFL canceling the game. But also, if all three of those things happen, then Cincinnati could concede the game that would have been played on Monday night. They could concede that game to Buffalo as they won the division outright with that victory over Baltimore. In that scenario, it would kind of screw the Chiefs a little bit, but you know, someone's going to take the worst end of this. But then ultimately, I ended it with this. Therefore, we'll sit on all undecided leagues until the conclusion of this week's games and the NFL's final decision. Let's enjoy Week 18. Let's do some DFS. Let's do some betting. Thanks for your support and patience, Memphis. You know, I want to make sure we get this right. And then ultimately, if they wind up playing the Buffalo-Cincinnati game in a regular season format, then we will go back in and retroactively add in all the points that would have been going into week 17. So we're not cashing out or closing out anything unless it was already decided. Again, I gave a shout out to Tyler. I won a league that he commissions, and the gentleman that I was playing, I won outright. He didn't have any Bills or Bengals. So Tyler went ahead and sent me my league winnings. But in all other leagues, we're just holding pat. So right now it's prayers to Damar Hamlin and his family. Mr. Damar Hamlin and his family deserve our support and love. So, but so do our commissioners. So I know I probably worded that a little bit funky, but again, a lot of support to Mr. Hamlin and his family and our commissioners. So let's get into, now that we've got that tough bit of news, we've got to show respect to the situation and to our commissioners. But let's get into some of my Dynasty checklist at the end of the season. First of all, I've done this show probably 2 years in a row for our patrons, and I'm going to do it here tonight because without Jerry, I'm just kind of trying to fill in a show. But the first thing that I do is I do nothing. Literally the rest of this week. Now, this week 18 is going to be an anomaly, this last week of the season, because of the Hamlin situation. But I'm just going to lay out. I'm not going to make any trades. I will respond to trade offers should I get any across my leagues, but I'm just going to chill. I'm going to try to enjoy football for football. Make a couple of wagers. I'm in a gambling contest. Just really sit back and enjoy that aspect of football. I love Dynasty. I love fantasy, but this is the last regular season week. Tons of implications with these games, especially with Buffalo and Cincinnati not playing. If anything, the only positive that I can see, and it's a small silver lining, is that New England Buffalo game means a lot because Buffalo's still playing for the 1 seed and New England's playing to get in. Cincinnati, had they won last night, they would have clinched the AFC North, but because of this current scenario, they're going to play their guys and they're going to try to win the AFC North outright this week. So a ton of implications. So first thing I'm doing on my dynasty checklist is I'm just chilling out this week. Now, starting next week, we start getting into the middle of February. I want to start putting this season completely away and start getting ready for 2023. Start taking notes. If you're in 17 leagues like me, it takes a lot longer. I tend to focus on my worst teams first because typically they need the most love. They need the most work. And, where can I start making adjustments? Am I going to go into a rebuild? Am I going to go into a contender? Am I buying? Am I selling? What am I doing with each team? I start making notes, and then I start making trades and making moves accordingly. You shouldn't. I mean, I'll be honest. I didn't have him, but I had a couple of rosters where I had T.Y. Hilton. When you're carrying 30 players, 5 on a taxi and 25 on your regular roster, you tend to have a couple of aged veterans out there. Now, as a former Colt and a guy I'm a fan of, I'm happy to see Ty back in the NFL. But at no point was Ty ever going to crack one of my starting lineups where I have to hit the submit button. So for me, Ty was a roster clogger. So start looking for those guys. Start clearing up those rosters. Start going through MFL. Now, again, I know some leagues will shut down waivers entirely until much later in the season. But if you can offload some of that dead weight and pick up some guys that are maybe a lottery ticket, especially running backs and wide receivers, running backs and tight ends. You're not going to find too many quarterbacks worth a damn, especially in a super flex league. But that's something else that I do. And then the next thing that I do, this will transition to the next thing I wanted to talk about, is I start looking at veterans. You cannot, and I repeat, I cannot say this with any more emphasis. You cannot be trading away veterans right now. That literally ended Sunday. If your league didn't have a trade deadline, if it did, it ended when your trade deadline ended. Your veterans are never going to be worth less than they are right now. And yes, technically, Jonathan Taylor's a veteran. Justin Jefferson is a veteran. When I say veteran, I mean like aged veterans. I mean Devontae Adams. I mean Christian McCaffrey. I mean Dalvin Cook. I mean George Kittle. I mean guys that have been in the league 4, 5, 6 years. That's what I mean. Devontae Adams probably won or maybe helped you fend off somebody in your Week 17 matchup with that absolute monster performance against the 49ers. Mike Evans, this week's highest scorer, Tom Brady. I mean, these are the guys that I'm talking about. They absolutely helped you win championships last week or literally 2 days ago in some cases, unless you're holding out, and that could be the case too. But in general, year over year, those guys are literally worth so much less because we're going to be focused on rookies. We're going to be focused on young players. The buzz is happening. I saw someone tweeted today. They're like, I'm going to go into the offseason and I'm going to pick up a lot of Elijah Moore, Kyle Pitts, and I want to say they said Jonathan Taylor. Maybe it was Javonte Williams. I'm like, well, the time to have bought those guys was 2 weeks ago. You're literally staring into, you heard the expression, the teeth of the defense. You're literally staring right into the hardest part, because now all of a sudden Kyle Pitts is not an injured tight end who's on IR on the end of your bench, especially if you're a contender. Now he's part of your future. So you got to go through here. Hey, who am I building around? Who am I going to be moving? This is the time of year where if I'm a 108, a 109, a 110, those are the most crucial rosters to look at. If you made the playoffs, right? So you have if you have your draft pick, you have draft pick 107 through 111. And that's the time to look at your roster and go, did I get here by luck, or did I get here by having a good solid team and my team did what they were supposed to do? If you limped into the playoffs and you didn't do it, that's where you have to evaluate that roster. Hey, you know what? This is a veteran-laden roster, and I'm not going to be able to repeat this magic again. Then maybe you decide to do a rebuild. Maybe you had a really young roster and some guys started, really balling out, like Devonta Smith and, Kenneth Walker come on the last half of the season and a lot of guys like that. Then, yeah, that's the time. Because if you think you're a piece or two away, now's the time to go get Cooper Kupp. Do I think you can get him for one first? Maybe not, but maybe. I mean, you have to sell. He's going to be 30. I believe he's going to be 30 in June or July. And that doesn't mean that he won't ball. He's under contract. Stafford's already said on his wife's podcast that he's coming back. But if you were a contender, now's the time to buy veterans. I'm not selling my rookies and young guys, especially if they've shown something. It's like Breece Hall, Kyle Pitts, all the young guys that are super talented that were on IR, the time to have bought them is past. So if you're going to get them, you're going to pay market, and if not, market plus. So those are the handful of things that I do. It's a simple checklist. Just trying to put a little bit of a show together for you of this team. So don't get it backwards. Don't do what everybody else is doing as you're evaluating your teams. Everybody wants to buy young guys. Well, if everybody's buying, drives prices up. If everybody's selling old guys, that drives prices down. So depending on what you're doing with your roster, you might be able to find some value out there somewhere. Speaking of young guys, I covered this in the Patreon maybe a month ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and then I tweeted it out a week or so after that. I'm going to leave you with this. It's going to be a shorter episode today. I really apologize. Wasn't prepared to do the show solo, but Jerry will be back next week, and we are going to do our 2022 Dynasty Seasonal Awards, such awards as Dynasty Commissioner of the Year, Rookie of the Year, and so many others. So next week will be the official award show. Hopefully I'll have my studio put back together after a frozen pipe water issue here in the basement and so much more. But I do want to leave you with this. Here is an offense that I'm all in on before it gets too expensive, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Najee Harris, I think we've talked about this before, but Najee Harris is not the RB, like I think it was 16. Talked about it a couple of weeks ago. But I think that buying window is closed. Looked very good in the game against Baltimore. I think he had 22 touches for 110 yards, caught a beautiful, beautiful throw from Kenny Pickett. And that's why I'm buying Steelers. I may have already said on the podcast too, if this is redundant, I do apologize. But man, Kenny Pickett, year one. George Pickens, year one. Pat Freiermuth, he's in year 2, going into year 3. Najee Harris, year 2, going into year 3. The old man on this roster is Deontay Johnson, and he's 26. Good on the Steelers for having a winning culture and putting a priority on winning. I think they handle that the opposite of how we should handle that as Dynasty GMs, to be quite honest. Pittsburgh continues to win just enough to where they can't get elite, but at least they're winning and being viable for playoffs every year. But I'm big on this Pittsburgh offense, and it's a good opportunity to go out there and cash in before prices get too high. I know Jordan McNamara of the Dynasty Analytics podcast. He's anti-Pickens. I've seen other Pickens people who are pro Pickens. I'm starting to pick up steam on Kenny Pickett. I think if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you know that I love cheap quarterbacks that everybody throws away. This year, one of those guys that really helped me down the stretch. He actually helped me win the Ultimate Dynasty Podcasters League. That was the league I was referring to earlier that Mr. Tyler Gunther is the host of, or the GM of. He's the host of the Dynasty Happy Hour podcast. Tyler runs a heck of a league. But a guy like Sam Darnold, I literally played Sam Darnold in a couple of leagues because I liked his matchups. I love these quarterbacks that are, dirt cheap, and what a great time to get value. I'll give you another quarterback as I'm just kind of filibustering the show here, is Deshaun Watson. I know a lot of people can't stomach him as a person, and I completely respect that thought, but I have him as my Dynasty QB7, and it feels gross to say, but you saw glimpses on Sunday of, why that is what it is. Three passing touchdowns. He rushed a little bit. He's not going to look like Deshaun Watson until next year. And I absolutely love Deshaun Watson at his value in Dynasty right now. Good friend of the show and good friend of mine, Nick Whalen, was, talking about like if you were an actual GM, but I think he had Watson 13. If Watson's valued as the QB 13 in Dynasty startups, I will tell you in 2023, I'm going to have a lot of Deshaun Watson. Absolutely a ton. I was hoping for more coming back from the suspension, but absolutely big on Deshaun Watson, especially if they get a coaching upgrade and they continue to add talent. But I like the talent that's there. They may or may not move on from Amari Cooper, but that's a great situation for Deshaun Watson. And I think we forget, because it's been 700 days until he started playing 3 or 4 weeks ago. And I think we forget that, in the 2020 season, he was right up there with the Mahomeses and the Allens and those guys. So if you can stomach having that type of person on your roster, I can do a pretty good job of differentiating between the person and the player. I'm just trying to win football games. I'm not inviting him over for dinner or anything like that. I just want to win football games. So that's a show. Again, wasn't prepared to go, solo, but I still wanted to make sure we got something out. So much going on in the world right now, but I just want to thank you guys. A lot of changes. I was hoping to roll those out this week, but at the same time, I still wanted to have something for you. So as we get out of here, I want to make sure to remind you to, whatever deity it is that you pray to, make sure to say a prayer for Damar Hamlin and his family. Be kind to your commissioners out there. I will have the studio revamped and redone for next week. And then please be sure to tune into our YouTube channel. Look for those Dynasty WarZone shorts, a little Dynasty diet. It's going to be much more concise than I normally am, especially in a show like this where I've had a tendency to ramble a little bit. It'll be a lot more concise. It'll be a 1 minute. It'll be a bite-sized snack, a little Dynasty nugget for you. And I'm going to try to do 2 to 3 of those a week. You'll only be able to find those on YouTube and TikTok. So look for Dynasty WarZone and follow us there. So on behalf of Jerry and on behalf of everybody here, thanks for tuning in to Dynasty WarZone. I was hoping to launch New Year, New Us, but we'll be back next week. And remember, here at the Dynasty WarZone, we're just here to make the world a better place for fantasy football. Thanks for all the support. Looking forward to a great 2023.